Queen Nzinga Mbande was one of the most formidable figures in African history, a symbol of resilience, courage, and defiance against the forces of colonialism that sought to destroy her people and their way of life. Born in 1583 into the royal family of the Kingdom of Ndongo, in what is now Angola, Nzinga's life would become a relentless fight to defend her kingdom, her people, and her heritage from the rapacious greed of European colonial powers. Nzinga was born to the Ngola, king of Ndongo, who ruled over a powerful African kingdom located between the Congo and the Kwanza rivers. Her father, King Ngola Mbande, was a strong leader, but his kingdom was constantly under threat from Portuguese colonial forces, who sought to control the rich lands and resources of the region. Nzinga's mother's identity is not as well recorded, but her influence in the royal court would have been crucial, as women played important political roles within many African societies, especially in the Kingdom of Ndongo. From a young age, Nzinga was raised in the shadows of conflict, learning the ways of leadership, diplomacy, and warfare. It is said that she grew up with an understanding of the need to protect her people and the kingdom's sovereignty, even when faced with the threat of foreign domination. Her early exposure to the brutality of colonialism and the exploitation of her people shaped the fierce resolve that would define her later life. Nzinga's early life as a princess was marked by political intrigue and the constant struggle for control over her kingdom. Her father's reign was beset with internal and external challenges, particularly the Portuguese, who had been entrenched in the region for decades. The Portuguese had established trading posts along the coast and were involved in the transatlantic slave trade, causing great harm to the African kingdoms in the area. They saw Ndongo as a prize to be seized, and their military campaigns against the kingdom became more aggressive. Nzinga's father died in 1617, and after his death, the throne was passed to Nzinga's brother, King Mbande. However, his reign was short and ineffective, and his kingdom continued to suffer from the Portuguese invasion. Nzinga's ambition and determination soon propelled her into a position of power. Her brother's failure led to her becoming the de facto ruler, and in 1624, Nzinga was officially crowned the Queen of Ndongo, inheriting the mantle of leadership at a time when the kingdom's very existence was under threat. When Queen Nzinga ascended to the throne, the Portuguese had already waged several attacks against the Kingdom of Ndongo. It was not long before she was forced into direct conflict with them. The Portuguese were intent on expanding their control over the area, but they met an adversary in Queen Nzinga who would not bow to them. In the years following her meeting with the Portuguese in 1624, Nzinga waged a series of brilliant campaigns against the Portuguese forces. Her most notable battle took place in 1641 when she led a combined army of Ndongo and Matamba forces against the Portuguese in a bid to reclaim control of the region. The Portuguese forces were defeated, and Nzinga reclaimed parts of her kingdom that had been lost. Nzinga's military tactics were as extraordinary as her diplomacy. The queen knew that she could not simply rely on traditional methods of warfare. She engaged in strategic alliances with other African kingdoms, including the neighboring kingdom of Matamba, to strengthen her forces against the Portuguese. She also sought assistance from the Dutch, who were enemies of the Portuguese, although the Dutch would later betray her, seeking only to further their own colonial interests. When the Portuguese demanded that she and her people submit to colonial rule, Nzinga rejected them outright, refusing to accept any Portuguese authority. Her disdain for colonialism and her commitment to independence were clear in every word she spoke that day. The refusal of the Portuguese to treat her as an equal ignited a fire in Nzinga's soul, and she would dedicate the rest of her life to resisting their advances. One of the most famous stories from this period occurred in 1624, when Nzinga met with Portuguese officials in the city of Luanda, the heart of the Portuguese colony. The meeting was supposed to be a diplomatic negotiation to discuss the future of Ndongo under Portuguese rule. Nzinga, known for her sharp wit and political acumen, arrived at the Portuguese court, but she was met with a humiliating slight. The Portuguese, who expected Nzinga to comply with their authority, refused to offer her a seat at the table where the meeting was to take place. This was a clear gesture of disrespect, for in African cultures, the offer of a seat was a sign of equal status and recognition. Nzinga, with her fierce pride and determination, did not bow to the humiliation. Instead, she ordered one of her servants to get down on all fours, creating a human throne upon which she sat. Her calm, dignified response to the insult demonstrated her strength and unyielding will. Nzinga's army was known for its discipline and its tactics, including the use of ambushes, surprise attacks, and psychological warfare. She also used her knowledge of the terrain to her advantage, making her a formidable opponent for the Portuguese, who were accustomed to fighting in more conventional ways. She was a master of using her people's knowledge of the land, deploying forces with surprising speed and precision. Her forces did not simply engage in head-on battles. They fought with cunning, luring the Portuguese into traps and overwhelming them with numbers when the time was right. Nzinga's ability to inspire her troops and command respect on the battlefield made her a legend in her own time. Although Queen Nzinga never fully succeeded in driving the Portuguese from her land, she managed to resist them for decades, maintaining the sovereignty of her people for as long as she could. Her defiance became a symbol of resistance across Africa, inspiring countless others to fight against colonialism and imperialism. Nzinga ruled for nearly 4 decades, but the weight of constant conflict and resistance wore heavily on her. In her later years, she made several attempts to negotiate peace with the Portuguese, but the colonialists remained relentless in their ambitions. Nzinga passed away in 1663, but her legacy lived on in the hearts of her people and in the stories passed down through generations. Her determination, her wisdom, and her fierce love for her people made Queen Nzinga a hero of African resistance. She is remembered not just as a warrior queen, but as a symbol of the unwavering strength of African women and the unyielding will of African nations to resist oppression. Queen Nzinga's story is one of unyielding strength, resilience, and dignity. From her refusal to accept the insult of the Portuguese to her strategic brilliance on the battlefield, Nzinga's life embodies the spirit of resistance against colonialism. Though her kingdom was eventually subsumed by the Portuguese Empire, her legacy endures as a beacon of African pride, independence, and the unbreakable will to defend one's people and culture. Her story is a reminder that resistance is not merely an act of war, but also of dignity, courage, and unbreakable spirit in the face of overwhelming odds.